So a few weeks ago, Anthropic did something major. They moved its core product, Claude Cowork, out of the desktop app onto the cloud. And what that means is that you can now run Claude Cowork sessions, not just on your local desktop, but you can also run them on the web and also access those same sessions on your mobile device. And around the same time, Google finished a major repositioning of its enterprise AI strategy. It rebranded Agentspace into Gemini Enterprise, then folded the whole stack into what it calls the Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. I know it's a mouthful. Both promise the same outcome, AI that actually does work, not just talks about it. But I would say there are two very different bets on where agentic AI should live. One is with you as an individual wherever you work, and the other is inside your company's data fabric, servicing the whole entire org. And I would say those two visions of where AI is heading says a lot about the companies behind them and their view on what they believe will be the future of AI. So today we're going to cover some of the key differences between Anthropic's Claude Cowork and Google's Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. Let's get into it. So here's what we'll be covering today. So we're going to cover what each tool actually is architecturally, how each operates, the core tension between them, who each tool is for, and the bigger thing is where this is all heading. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Sunny. I'm a serial founder now on my fourth startup. I'm a former senior engineer at Bloomberg and Shopify, and currently an adjunct professor at Columbia Business School, where I teach tech and AI. Listen, my goal for today, and really for all my videos, is to help you make sense of this ever-evolving AI landscape we find ourselves in. Let's get started with the video. Let's start with Gemini, formerly Agentspace. So on October 9, 2025, Google renamed Agentspace to Gemini Enterprise, and then it consolidated the broader stack, so that's Vertex AI, Agentspace, the agent development kit, all into Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. But if you search Agentspace today, you will land on the Gemini Enterprise docs. So what exactly is it? It is not a desktop app, not something an individual downloads. It's actually company-wide. It's a company-wide search and agent layer that sits on top of your organization's data. Gmail, Drive, SharePoint, things like that. It gives your organization one multimodal search interface on top of all of those tools. And most importantly, it is definitely permission aware. Your query can't surface anything that you don't already have access to, because that governance model is foundational to the whole value proposition. Under the hood, it runs on Google's Gemini 3 models with a no-code builder, now called Workspace Studio, for assembling agents without code, and a library of pre-built agents. And there's also the A2A protocol, the agent-to-agent protocol, which lets agents on different platforms talk to each other. In terms of pricing, which tells you a lot about the intended audience, this isn't a $20 product. Gemini Enterprise runs from about $21 per seat for business to $50 to $60 for plus the consumption-based billing underneath. The bet here is that your entire organization becomes queryable and actionable through AI, not the employee, not one employee, but the entire organization. Now let's talk about Cowork. And the contrast between the two is pretty sharp. So of course, it launched as a research preview in January 2026. Can't believe that this was this year. It came to Windows in the spring inside a lightweight virtual machine. And just a couple of weeks ago, it expanded to web and mobile. Setup is almost nothing. Download the Claude desktop app, open Cowork, point it to a folder, describe the task in a plain language, super simple. No terminal, no API keys, no procurement cycle. And architecturally, it's just Claude Code, which is Anthropic's command line tool, repackaged for non-technical users with a real interface. On Mac, it actually runs on a Sandboxed VM using Apple's virtualization framework. So there is genuine isolation between the agent and the rest of the system, which makes it really safe. And what's interesting, it's moved really fast. In March, Anthropic shipped Dispatch, where you can assign a task from your phone and let it run on your desktop. The web and mobile release added continuity across devices, where you can start on your desktop and check in on your phone. and pick it back up later on your desktop. And through the Claude and Chrome integration, it goes beyond files. It can actually open up browsers and fill out forms and read interfaces, which is a very powerful feature. Now, if you look at the pricing, this feels very different than Gemini. There's $20 for the Pro plan, $100 for Max, and then $200 for the Max 20X. The philosophy here is the opposite of Gemini. How do you give one knowledge worker a powerful personal agent that's safe enough to actually adopt? It's more bottoms up. In this case, the individual on their own machine doing work that used to take hours. Okay, so now let's explore how both of these platforms actually work. So first, there's Gemini's agent platform. So a user can ask, what's the status of Project Atlas across email, docs, and tickets? And it can pull from Gmail, Google Drive, and Jira all at once, and is able to answer things with an actual citation. So it traces everything back to real data. That's really, really powerful. But with Cowork, you can point it at, for example, your downloads folder and just type organize by file type, or rename the generic stuff based on the content, or archive anything older than 6 months. And before it touches anything, it will actually show you the plan and wait for your approval. And that checkpoint is pretty core to the safety design. When an agent can reach your file system directly, an error costs far more than obviously in a chat. And earlier this year, actually, an early adopter watched Cowork wipe roughly 15,000 sensitive files that they ultimately had to recover using iCloud. So those are the types of risks that Cowork has really designed to mitigate. But I want to take a step back here for a second, because for the past few years, the whole conversation has really been around model quality. Who's at the frontier this quarter, right? But the models are converging, and that gap matters less than the headlines suggest. The real fight now is distribution, where the AI lives and how cleanly it fits in workflows you already have. Cowork bets it lives with you, the individual, wherever you happen to be working. Gemini bets it lives inside your company's data fabric. They're not competing for the same user, they're competing for where the agentic work should happen. So here's where I'd say the core tension lies. Cowork works for you as an individual across desktop, web, and phone now, but bounded to the context you hand it. A folder, a set of files, a project. Gemini runs across the organization's data fabric for everyone governed by existing permissions. So the buyer differs. For Cowork, it's you, $20 to $200 a month. For Gemini, it's the CIO, $21 to $60 per seat plus consumption. Setup, of course, also differs. Cowork is like 5 minutes. Gemini is a much larger, more sophisticated rollout. Cowork is best at deep execution inside a scope you define. Gemini is good at cross-system synthesis, pulling from things like Jira and Gmail into one grounded answer. But among all these differences, I'd say that governance is by far the biggest. With Cowork, you yourself are the governance layer. With Gemini, that governance layer is institutional. Admin consoles, identity controls, audit logs. Those are all the tools that Gemini hands you when offering governance capabilities. Cowork is your personal assistant. It goes where you go. Gemini is the organizational's nervous system, compounding with scale. So with all of these differences, what makes sense for you? Well, Cowork is better if you're an individual, a founder, a consultant, a freelancer, anyone whose work lives mostly in your own tools. It takes like minutes to deploy. It follows you across desktop, web, and phone. And if you already pay for Claude Pro or Max, you have it. Gemini could make better sense if you are an IT leader evaluating org-wide infrastructure. The fit is strongest if you're already on Google Workspace, where the integration is native. But still, there is a real gap in the middle. The 5 to 20 person team that needs cross-source synthesis, but not the full enterprise stack for this scenario, actually doesn't quite fit either of these solutions. So I'll leave you with this parting thought. Where is this all going? I'd say these two bets are actually not mutually exclusive because big companies will likely run both Gemini as the institutional layer and Cowork as the individual's agent for the work that sits outside the corporate fabric. The open question, though, for the next year is this. When you've got a personal agent that follows you everywhere and an institutional one inside the company, which one runs your day to day? Nobody, in my opinion, has fully claimed that layer yet, although I do have some opinions on which one I favor. But I will keep that to myself. Now, if you stuck around till the end of this video, I appreciate you. I will see you on the next one.